Shifting focus, the BRICS group of major emerging economies, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are all set to hold their 15th summit in Johannesburg between 22nd and 24th of August. Now, hours ahead of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's departure for the summit, all eyes are on a possible meeting between PM Modi and his Chinese counterpart, Chinese President Xi Jinping, which, if it happens, will be a first since last November's meet. Now, the possible meeting comes amid the India and China standoff and the stalemate at the Indo-China border, even after 19 rounds of talks. For now, the External Affairs Ministry says that PM's scheduled bilaterals are yet to be finalized. Now, the agenda of the 15th BRICS Summit in Africa is partnership for mutually accelerated growth, sustainable development, and inclusive multilateralism. However, amid heightened geopolitical tensions, the Ukraine war, its impact on global economy, along with the impact of Western sanctions on Russia and the US-China tensions are likely to take center stage. Also on the agenda are expected discussions around the expansion of the BRICS grouping as the leaders of countries forming nearly half of the global population converge in Johannesburg.
India-China meeting, Yeshi asked and then others asked the same question in different ways. आपने कहा होती है, नहीं होती है. All I would say is that, as I mentioned in my remarks, the host country, South Africa, has invited large number of guest countries, besides, of course, the BRICS members who would be present there. The Prime Minister's schedule in terms of bilateral meetings with those leaders who would be present in South Africa is still being developed, and as and when we have details of confirmation of Honorable Prime Minister's different bilateral meetings, we would definitely apprise our media friends.
All right, let me take this across to my guest. Anil Kumar Trigunayat, former ambassador, joins us this evening to share his perspective. We're also expecting Mr. Dilip Sinha, former permanent representative to the United Nations, to join us in this discussion. Anil Trigunayat ji, welcome on board. Thank you very much for talking with Mirror Now. This summit, of course, comes amid the Russia-Ukraine war and a world that is trying to still recover from the losses of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, there's a lot of talk about what's on the agenda, whether it's expanding of the BRICS grouping or the de-dollarization bit of it. For you, what would be the expectation at this year's BRICS Summit?
Well, as you know, the BRICS has emerged in attractiveness and in importance across geographies, which is clearly indicative from the fact that more than 40 countries are looking to join it. 22 countries apparently have already formally applied to join it, and they are coming from rich countries, including from the Gulf. And therefore, this is something that is a major dimension of it, exactly how it will play out. Because the rules and guidelines, criteria are still being developed, in my view. But I think there will be a certain short list of the countries that are going to happen. More importantly, we have seen that there is something called a new development bank, which is the BRICS Development Bank, an alternate financial institution where the clearing mechanisms are also being worked out as more and more countries are trying to resort to their national currencies in trade and investments. So that will be another key development which will be seen. I'm not looking at the BRICS currency per se at this stage, but what we are looking at is a greater collaboration among banks and through the NDB, and also recapitalizing NDB beyond $50 billion, because there is a target of making it $100 billion. Now, it is quite possible, as the UAE has joined and some others, the bank, that many of these countries may be invited to join the bank and probably replenish its capital base, so that they could also give more loans and on different terms, essentially, than what is done by IMF and World Bank to various countries. Now, South Africa naturally looking to emerge as a leader in Africa. So obviously it has tried to invite all the countries and of Africa, but I think except for 5, rest everybody is attending. So that will be a major outreach. Then, of course, there are standard problems that is being discussed in G20, G7, everywhere else. And those are like the SDGs have been pushed back, that we are looking at food security problems, we are looking at energy security, the impact of COVID-19, as well as that of Russia-Ukraine war. So all these issues are very much there. At the same time, internal dynamic among countries is also playing out. Exactly how that will work out will decide the course of BRICS. I always say that it has the potential of becoming a new G20 with a non-Western orientation. But at the same time, for that to happen, it is important and imperative that the fundamentals of the major powers in the region, in the grouping, needs to be sorted out. There has to be a certain kind of appreciation, or as we call it, these mutual respect for the sensitivities of each other. Then only it can happen. China, you mentioned, and we have the Chinese president there. Whether the prime minister will meet or not, normally it is done that during the BRICS summits, whenever they happen, this is happening after several years. After the pandemic, first physical meeting. So it is quite likely. And of course, a meeting with the host president is very much on the cards always. That is very much there. And there will be many other bilaterals. We have already learned that the prime minister will be meeting the Iranian president as well, which is also a very important development from our point of view because of the connectivity to Central Asia and Afghanistan and other places.
Yeah. All right. Let me also welcome Mr. Dilip Sinha to this discussion. Mr. Sinha, Anil ji very extensively, listed out his expectations and, what he's looking forward to from the 15th BRICS Summit this year. But I'm going to ask you something that is there on everybody's mind, and it's been a topic of discussion and conversation everywhere. And that is whether Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping is going to be meeting. Now, we don't have a confirmation from either side, but do you expect that to happen? And if that does happen, what are you expecting out of it?
Well, relations between India and China are not good right now, as Ambassador Tignorath himself pointed out. The fact is that China has not had an ambassador in Delhi since October last year, when Ambassador Sun Weidong left. The mission is run by a CDA, a charge d'affaires. We have seen the kind of rhetoric that has been coming out of the Chinese media. Newspapers like China Times and Global Times talk about war and say that if India wants war, it will get it, and they reminded India of 1962. We know of India's economic policies. One of the measures that have been taken recently by the government of India has been to license the import of laptops, and that has been done primarily because the laptop market was dominated by exports from China. Our exports to China have shrunk very drastically last year, mainly because of Chinese actions, whereas Chinese exports to India continue to increase. So the points that Ambassador Tignorath mentioned, that there has to be respect for each other's national sovereignty and each other's national sensibilities, which are lacking between India and China. That is not the only problem that afflicts BRICS today. We must remember that President Putin is not going to South Africa because he has been convicted by the International Criminal Court, and South Africa is a member of the International Criminal Court, and Putin is not sure if he'll be arrested if he goes to South Africa. So there are major problems within BRICS, between India and China, and for Russia itself because of the Ukraine war. So all these factors make it extremely unlikely that BRICS itself will be able to offer anything major as a breakthrough. Now, you asked about the possibility of Prime Minister Modi meeting President Xi. The fact is that recently the military level talks took place and they were inconclusive because there was no progress made. But that is the major problem between India and China today. The security issue, as our foreign minister has pointed out, that we cannot delink the two the way China wants. China wants that this border dispute and the security issue should be dealing from economic relations. Now, EAM has rightly pointed out that we cannot delink the two. The two will go hand in hand. So even if there is a meeting between the two leaders in Johannesburg, it will at best be a meeting to look forward to perhaps some kind of improvement in the bilateral relations on the military front, in case there is some progress on that.
Okay.
On the trade front, I don't see anything happening, because on the trade front, we have ourselves joined the Indo-Pacific Economic Forum, and all our FTAs in the last years have been with non-BRICS countries. So whether it is the trade or economic field or in the political field, one does not see BRICS being a platform for increasing cooperation among the BRICS members today.
Okay, I also want to talk about one of the key agendas at this year's summit, and that is expanding the BRICS grouping. And we know that, so far about 21 to 23 nations have applied to be a part of the BRICS grouping, and that includes countries like Iran, Argentina, Saudi Arabia, all of these countries. Ambassador Trigunayat, help us understand why do countries want to be part of the BRICS grouping at this point in time, when there are major geopolitical changes that have happened after the pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war? And number two, India has maintained that we're open to expanding it, but we need guidelines in place to sort of know who should be a member and who shouldn't be. How far is that feasible in a diverse grouping like the BRICS?
Well, as far as you mentioned about the attractiveness of BRICS at this point of time, it is precisely because of the kind of geopolitical situation and the global disorder that we are witnessing that more and more countries are looking at some alternate mechanisms. And the BRICS does provide essentially two of the major economies of the world, China and India. India is the fastest growing economy and the fifth largest, likely to be third soon. So obviously there are tremendous opportunities in all these countries. And many of the countries from the oil-rich Gulf countries, you can see that they are following an Act-East policy. Act-East policy in their sense is going towards their markets. So therefore, it makes ample sense for them to be a part of an organization which provides an alternative non-Western kind of a platform for them. So that's why that is one thing. Most of these countries are also looking at, in my view, the sort of a hypocrisy of the Western liberal order and how it has worked, and each one of them has suffered one time or the other. The Gulf countries mainly know that their petrodollars are the ones which had really upheld the US dollar to a great extent after it was detached from the gold standard. So I think that now these countries are looking at, and if the BRICS agrees that it's a new development bank has to expand its footprint, it needs to recapitalize itself. And I think these countries, like last year, UAE also joined the bank. It has still not joined the BRICS. So there could be some modalities, exactly how it is going to be expanded. It is not necessary that you just take them all on board. There would be, I think, a graded way of taking some countries. Many of the countries have approached India and each other members singly, asking them to support their case for the BRICS expansion, including to India. A lot of outreach has been made, and they are all our strategic partners. So I think that we are not against the BRICS expansion, but India wants that it should be in a calibrated manner so that it does not impact or dilute the overall ambit of the BRICS. Secondly, it should not be lopsided, in my view, in China's favor, because they are very, very keen to develop it into some kind of an anti-Western outfit, which India is not so much interested. And I think that is something very important. But the key issue that might emerge, while the BRICS currency may not be in the offing at the moment, but there will be a greater emphasis on use of national currencies, in which India is also very much committed and doing it. We have just done it with the UAE recently and signed up with nearly 20 countries, the arrangements through UPI and transaction in the bilateral national currencies. So that is something that is going to happen. That means it will have an impact on the on the domination of the dollar, which still prevails and will continue to prevail for many years. But at least one can see more and more countries sorting to that.
Okay. Interesting point there. I'm going to request both of you to stay. I'm just going to get some voices from the Indian diaspora for our viewers from South Africa. What are the Indians who are staying there saying about Prime Minister Modi coming there and participating in the BRICS Summit? Let's listen into some of those voices.
We are very excited. Our Indian community throughout our country are very, very excited that our Indian Prime Minister is coming to our country. And I'm positive that with all the achievements that Prime Minister Modi did in India, he will definitely bring that down to the summit and help all the countries to grow from strength to strength.
We believe that the meeting of the BRICS Summit is going to be extremely important for South Africa as well as India. We are so proud of the fact that Shri Narendra Modi ji is going to be here on our soil, bringing with him the value systems of India to Africa.
We are very, very happy that the Prime Minister of India, PM Modi, is coming to South Africa. And हमारी बहुत उम्मीद है कि ये जो ट्रिप होएगा ब्रिक्स का स्पेशली इसमें साउथ अफ्रीका और इंडिया की रिलेशनशिप्स और बढ़ जाएगी.
All right, coming back to our discussion, Dilip Sinha ji, we have seen over the past several years now, India has emerged as the voice of the global south. We're also seeing major developing economies gaining more and more importance in the geopolitical changes that we have seen over the past 1.5 to 2 years. How do you see BRICS really panning, out and moving forward with this in mind? And also the fact that, as I asked earlier, how feasible are these things such as de-dollarization or expanding or other such concerns among such countries which have diverse interests?
The world is going through a flux right now. The international trading system and the international financial architecture both are in a flux because that earlier mantra of globalization has been debunked and the world is moving towards what America calls de-risking, which means basically chunking globalization and moving towards greater protectionism because they want to protect the national interest. So the earlier emphasis on efficiency, cost cutting has been replaced by larger considerations of national security. Now, BRICS was founded at a time when there was complete US domination. It was a unipolar world. So India joined BRICS in the expectation that the world would become multipolar. But in the last decade or so, what has happened is that China has emerged as a superpower, and China's behavior on the global scene has been exactly like a superpower of one of domination. And China wants to use BRICS as one of the organizations for its domination of creating yuan as an alternative currency to the dollar and imposing Chinese debt upon other countries. So in this kind of an environment, while India would definitely like to see BRICS promote a multipolar world, if BRICS becomes a vehicle only for promoting China's national interests or China's global domination, then this is not the place for India to be in. So India has to watch very carefully what shape and what direction BRICS takes. The absence of Russia is going to be a major factor. The fact that President Putin is not there in Johannesburg is a major factor because Russia is the founder of BRICS. So we have to see how the core group of BRICS, which is China, India, and Russia, move forward in their relations. And the fact that India also has its security concerns, and India has thrown its lot with the West in Quad and in the IPEF. So we have to keep these factors in mind. And the other two countries, South Africa is going through internal disturbances, as is Brazil. So it is essentially the fact that China's domination over BRICS has to be looked at very carefully by India as it sees the organization move forward.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up here. Ambassadors Dilip Sinha and Anil Trigunaya, thank you very much for joining us this evening and sharing your perspective on the 15th BRICS Summit. on Mirror Now. Remember, Prime Minister Narendra Modi leaves tomorrow early morning for South Africa, where he will be participating. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining us on Mirror Now. And now